Tonight, we drift toward the quiet edge of the day, not as if a switch is being flipped, but as if a room is slowly dimming, one small lamp at a time. The world is still here, yet it begins to feel a little farther away. You might notice at first in ordinary places, your eyes rest longer on the same spot, your jaw unclenches, and your breathing finds a softer rhythm. Thoughts stop marching in straight lines and start wandering gently like smoke, rising and thinning. Even time feels less strict, as if the minutes have stopped lining up in neat rows. Sleep is not the brain shutting down. It is the brain changing its work, trading the bright tasks of the day for the quieter tasks of the night. All day long, an invisible pressure has been building inside you, a quiet insistence that you have been awake long enough. It gathers with every conversation, every decision, every moment your attention held itself upright. At the same time, another steady force has been keeping time, like a patient clock that does not tick loudly but never stops. It leans you toward wakefulness in the morning and toward rest at night, even if the day has been strange or your schedule has slipped. When evening comes and the light softens, your brain starts to treat the night as a real place again. Your body temperature eases down by a small degree, as if preparing a cooler, calmer room inside you. Somewhere behind your forehead, the busy threads of attention begin to loosen. The mind stops scanning the horizon for what comes next and starts listening to what is already here. This is why drowsiness can feel like warmth and heaviness at once. Your eyelids grow thicker, your focus narrows, and the small muscles you've been holding all day begin to let go, one after another. Sometimes, if you push past this moment, you can feel a brief second wind, as if the day is trying to reclaim you. But if you stay close to the quiet, the pressure to sleep and the timing of night begin to agree with each other. It can feel like sinking into warm water. Sounds become rounder and less sharp, and the world becomes easier to ignore. You do not have to chase sleep or prove you deserve it. You only have to stop gripping the day so tightly and let the brain do what it was built to do. In this first gentle descent, you are not gone yet. You are simply being guided toward a different kind of awareness, one that asks less of you and gives more back. Tonight, we will follow that guidance step by step as the brain eases itself into sleep and shows us how rest is built, not from emptiness, but from careful, ancient design. In the background of waking life, your brain keeps a gentle record of effort, not a moral score, not a judgment, just a quiet tally of time spent alert. Every hour you are awake, brain cells spend energy to keep thoughts moving, senses sharp, and decisions available. With that work comes a slow accumulation of tiny signals in the spaces between cells, like fine dust settling after a busy day. One of those signals has a simple job: to make you feel sleepy when wakefulness has lasted long enough. Scientists often call it adenosine, But you can think of it as a soft note left on the kitchen counter reminding you it is time to close the house for the night. It gathers gradually as you read, speak, drive, worry, laugh, and listen. The longer the day, the more clearly the message forms. You have been awake long enough. You feel it as texture, a heaviness behind the eyes, a slower patience for noise, a wish to stop holding yourself upright. You might notice that small choices become harder. Even pleasant tasks begin to feel like they require a little more fuel than they did before. Your body joins the conversation too. A yawn rises like a wave, not boredom, but a reset that shifts breathing and invites stillness. The message does not force you to sleep. It simply makes staying awake cost a little more, as if the brain is charging a higher price for staying bright. This is why rest can feel irresistible after travel, long meetings, or a day that asks too much of your attention. It is not just tired muscles, but a tired mind that has carried the world for hours. And then sometimes we borrow wakefulness from the future. A cup of coffee can temporarily block the brain from hearing that sleepy message, as if placing a soft glove over a ringing bell. The bell still rings underneath. The pressure still exists, even if it feels quieter. When the coffee fades, the message returns with its full weight, and sleepiness can arrive all at once. It seems sudden, but it has been building patiently the entire time. During sleep, that signal slowly clears away. In the quiet hours, the brain reduces the very pressure it created, so morning can feel light again. So tonight, if you notice heaviness, you can treat it as a kindness. It is your brain reminding you that the night is not a failure of will, but a necessary return. Let the day's record be complete. Let the message be heard without argument. Because when sleep pressure is strong enough, it starts to tip the balance inside you. The alert systems begin to step back, making room for the quieter work that can only happen when you are asleep. And with that room created, the brain turns to its second guide, the one that tells it not just that you need sleep, but that the timing is right for it. Alongside sleep pressure, there is a quieter guide that does not care how busy your day was. It cares instead about what time it is inside you. Deep in the brain sits a tiny cluster of cells that keeps a steady rhythm day after day. It listens most closely to light, using the brightness of morning and the dimness of evening to stay in sync with the turning world. When morning light reaches your eyes, a message travels inward that says, in its own wordless way, this is day. Alertness rises, the body warms slightly, and the mind becomes more willing to focus outward. As the afternoon passes, that inner timing continues, even if you never think about it. It coordinates thousands of small rhythms, like a calm conductor, guiding an orchestra you cannot see. Then evening arrives, and the light changes character. Shadows soften, colors deepen, and the eyes send a new kind of message. The bright hours are ending. In response, the brain allows a gentle night signal to rise. Many people know it as melatonin, but it is best understood as permission, not force. It does not knock you out. It simply makes it easier to let go. This is why dim rooms feel different from bright ones. Warm lamps, softer screens, and darkness behind your eyelids help the brain believe the night is real. Sharp, bright light late in the evening can blur that belief. The brain receives daytime hints and delays its night signal, even when your body is tired. You may have felt this in airports, hotels, or late-night living rooms. The bed is there, the blanket is there, but the brain is still reading the light like a schedule. When the night signal rises, temperature begins to drift downward by a small, quiet degree. It is as if the body turns the inner engine to a lower flame, preparing for slow maintenance. At the same time, heat often moves outward to the skin. Hands and feet may feel warmer while the center grows gently cooler, the way a house settles after the furnace eases. This timing can also explain the evening second wind. Sometimes you feel a brief lift of alertness before sleep, as if the day is making one last offer. That lift is part of rhythm. It is the clock keeping you steady until the night is truly ready to receive you. People differ in when this readiness arrives. Some are naturally earlier, some later, and most shift a little with seasons and routine. No matter your pattern, the clock keeps its promise. It watches the light, counts the hours, and makes space for sleep when darkness has settled in. Tonight, we help it by keeping things simple. We let the room soften, and we allow the brain's sense of time to align with the quiet. Because when timing and sleep pressure meet, the descent becomes smoother. The brain stops negotiating and starts preparing the handover from wakefulness to rest. When sleep pressure is high and the night's timing is kind, the brain begins to choose. It is not drifting aimlessly now, but steering toward a different mode. During the day, wakefulness is supported by alerting signals that keep you ready. They help you hold posture, track meaning and sounds, and keep thoughts arranged like tools on a workbench. As evening deepens, another set of signals begins to rise, quieter and more calming. Think of them as the brain's dimmer switch, sending hush messages to the parts that keep you lit and watchful. This shift is one reason falling asleep can feel sudden. For a while, you may hover in a hallway, half awake, half drifting, and then the balance tips. The brain prefers stable states. It would rather be clearly awake or clearly asleep than flicker endlessly between the two. So the networks that promote sleep and the networks that promote wakefulness are arranged like a gentle seesaw. When one side becomes stronger, it naturally pushes the other side down. You can feel this as a change in your mind's posture. Planning becomes harder to sustain, and daydreaming becomes easier to allow. The body follows the brain's decision. Muscles in the face and shoulders soften, the jaw releases, and the hands become heavier where they rest. Breathing begins to manage itself. You may notice longer exhales, as if your chest is learning a calmer language. Even the senses begin to shift in priority. The world is still present, but it no longer feels like something you must constantly interpret. If a thought arrives, you can watch it the way you watch headlights pass through a window. It appears, it moves, and it disappears without requiring you to follow. Trying hard to sleep is still a form of wakefulness because effort keeps the brain bright. So we trade effort for permission and let the brain do what it has practiced for countless nights. Inside, calming signals begin to quiet the alerting ones more firmly. The mind becomes less reactive, less eager to answer every question it invents. Temperature continues its slow descent. The body settles deeper into the bed, as if finding the shape it wants to keep for a while. In this stage, you are still near the surface. You can wake easily, and you might even believe you were awake the whole time. But the brain is already crossing a threshold. It is preparing the first true layer of sleep, where the outside world begins to blur, and rest can finally take hold. And so, we move forward into the corridor, where waking loosens and sleep begins to form its first gentle patterns. Now we enter the corridor between waking and sleep, the place where the mind becomes less like a list and more like water. This is the doorway into light sleep, delicate and easy to miss. You may feel as if you are floating between worlds. You can still hear the room, but it seems less important. Thoughts arrive in fragments. A memory appears without being invited. A phrase repeats softly. An image flashes and fades like a lantern behind fog. Time loosens here. A minute can feel long or vanish completely. Your body follows the shift. The muscles you use to hold yourself ready begin to release, especially around the shoulders, the jaw, and the hands. Breathing becomes deeper and less managed. The chest rises and falls with an easier rhythm, as if the body is being rocked by its own tide. This is also when small surprises can happen. A finger twitches, a leg jerks, or you feel a brief sense of tipping as though you were stepping off a curb. These little jolts are common. The brain is adjusting the boundary between ready to act and safe to let go. Inside the skull, the pace of activity begins to change. The fast daytime patterns that support sharp attention start to soften, and slower rhythms begin to appear. You do not need to understand the patterns to feel their effect. The mind becomes less interested in control and more willing to drift. At the same time, the brain starts to protect sleep before it fully arrives. It becomes a little more selective about which messages from the senses deserve to reach awareness. There is a relay in the brain that normally carries sound, touch, and other signals up to the thinking surface of the mind. As you fall asleep, that relay quiets, letting fewer messages through. A sound may still happen in the room, but it lands more softly. The brain asks, almost automatically, is this important enough to wake for? And most ordinary sounds receive a gentle no. If you wake during this stage, you may believe you were awake the whole time. Light sleep can be slippery like that, leaving only a faint memory of drifting. And yet, something has changed. You have stepped onto the first rung of the night's ladder. From here, sleep can become steadier. The brain begins to create repeating patterns that help it stay asleep, even while the world outside continues to move. Tonight, we let the corridor carry us forward. We do not chase clarity, and we do not demand meaning from the images that pass. We offer the simplest reassurance, stillness, warmth, darkness, and the steady weight of the bed. And as that reassurance settles in, the next layer of sleep begins to form, a little deeper and more sheltered. The brain will start to close the gate more firmly, so rest can hold without interruption. And sometimes, in the modern world, we meet a small, ordinary trick. The way a late cup of coffee can make night feel farther away. It can seem as though sleepiness has been erased, when really it has only been turned down. Earlier, we spoke about that gentle, sleepy messenger that gathers during the day. Coffee does not sweep it out of the brain like a broom. Instead, it covers the messenger's voice for a while. It is like placing a cushion over a clock that is still ticking. The pressure to sleep continues to build underneath. Your body has still been awake, your cells have still been busy, and the quiet tally of the day is still being counted. So, you may feel awake, yet not quite cleanly awake. Your mind might sharpen, but your body can feel slightly out of sync, as if it is walking in shoes meant for a different hour. This is why borrowed wakefulness can be strange. The eyes stay open, the thoughts keep moving, but there is a softness behind everything, like a fog you're trying to pretend is not there. Later, when the borrowed wakefulness fades, the sleepy messenger is still waiting. It steps forward again, not angry, not impatient, simply present. Sometimes it returns all at once. One moment you are scrolling, folding laundry, answering one more message, and the next you feel the full weight of the day settle onto your shoulders. That sudden heaviness can feel like a wave. It is not new tiredness arriving out of nowhere, but old tiredness, finally being allowed to speak. If you have ever had trouble sleeping after coffee, you may have noticed how the mind can become busy in an unhelpful way. The brain is awake enough to think, but not calm enough to let thoughts drift away. Night can then feel like it is waiting at the door while the mind keeps rearranging furniture. Nothing is truly wrong, but the room is not ready. Tonight, we are not judging any of it. We are simply noticing how delicate the doorway into sleep can be and how easily the brain responds to signals that say, stay alert. Because falling asleep is not only about being tired, it is also about the brain deciding that it is safe and timely and worth it to let go. So, if you feel a second wind or a stubborn brightness, You can treat it like weather. It will pass, and the night will still be here. You can return to simple cues, dim light, quiet air, a steady breath. You can let your body know gently that there is no further task required. Even when wakefulness has been borrowed, the brain still remembers the way down. It knows how to soften attention, how to lower the inner volume, how to guide you toward rest. And as we continue, we will follow the brain into the place where that decision is made. We will listen for the moment the mind stops negotiating and begins calmly to switch into sleep. There is a comforting truth about sleep. The brain does not stumble into it. It changes state with intention, like a ship turning toward harbor long before the shore is visible. During the day, many small groups of brain cells keep you bright and ready. They help you notice movement, understand language, keep your thoughts in order, and hold your body upright without constant effort. Some of these groups sit deep in the center of the brain, and some sit lower, in older regions that have been keeping creatures awake for a very long time. Together, they act like a steady hum, a background brightness that makes the world feel urgent. At night, another set of cells begins to speak more clearly. Their message is simple: slow down. Instead of shouting, they use quiet hush signals that calm the alert systems. It is less like a battle and more like a gentle vote, slowly tipping in favor of rest. The brain likes steadiness. It would rather be clearly awake or clearly asleep than hover in an exhausting in-between for long. So it relies on a kind of mutual balance. When the alert systems are strong, they keep the sleep-promoting systems quieter. And when the sleep-promoting systems grow stronger, they begin to quiet the alert systems in return. The seesaw settles on one side, and the body follows. This is why the moment of falling asleep can feel sudden. You may be thinking one more thought and then realize that thought has drifted away without finishing. In the control room of the brain, this is not confusion. It is coordination. Imagine two gentle hands on the same dimmer switch. One hand lowers the lights of wakefulness, the other hand raises the softer lights of sleep. For a few minutes, the room may feel uncertain. You might hear the hallway, then forget it, then remember it again. But the brain keeps adjusting until the new state holds. It does not want you half asleep and half ready, because that is not restorative. So it chooses. It makes a clean transition as soon as the timing and pressure are right. This is also why routines can feel like a lullaby. A familiar shower, a brushed tooth, a dim lamp, a book that does not demand too much. These cues tell the brain again and again that it can safely cross over. This choice can be helped by simple conditions. Darkness, comfort, and safety make it easier for the brain to commit. Stress, bright light, or a sense that you must stay on call can keep the alert systems louder than they need to be. The brain is not stubborn. It is protective. Tonight, we offer it evidence that there is nothing to guard. No emergency, no unfinished chase, no need to keep watch. And as that evidence settles in, the sleep-promoting side gains confidence. The dimmer slides lower, the room grows quieter, and you begin to cross the threshold into a steadier kind of sleep. Now we come closer to the part of the brain that truly invites sleep. It sits deep and quiet, near the front and center, like a small lamp switch hidden behind a wall. When this region becomes active, it sends calming messages outward. These messages act like gentle brakes on the systems that keep you alert. You can picture it as a caregiver moving through a house at night. It does not argue with the day. It simply walks room to room, turning down what does not need to be on. First, it softens the mental spotlight that keeps you scanning and planning. Then it quiets the quick signals that keep your senses sharp and your muscles ready. The effect is subtle, but it spreads. The mind becomes less eager to chase and more willing to rest. This sleep-inviting region speaks in a chemical language that the brain understands well. It uses calming messengers that tell other cells to slow their firing, to pause, to stop repeating themselves. That chemical hush is one reason your thoughts can suddenly lose their sharp edges. A worry that felt urgent an hour ago can begin to feel far away, as if it belongs to someone else. At the same time, the body begins to follow the brain's quieter tone. Heart rate eases, breathing slows, and posture stops holding itself so firmly. If you are lying down, you may feel your weight more clearly. The bed becomes less like a surface you're on and more like a place that is holding you. This is not weakness. It is a designed shift, a signal that the day's work can stop. Sometimes, though, this sleep-inviting voice is competing with wakefulness that is still loud. Bright light, emotional stress, or an exciting idea can keep the alert systems talking over it. When that happens, the brain may hover at the doorway, not because it cannot sleep, but because it is still listening for whether it should. It is checking for safety. Tonight, we offer safety in small ways. We let the room be dim. We let the body be warm. We let the mind be unchallenged. And as those conditions hold, the sleep-inviting region grows more confident. It sends its calming messages again and again, steady as a slow tide. The brain then begins to shut down wakefulness in layers. It does not turn everything off at once because it is careful. Instead, it reduces the volume of alertness until the quieter signals can be heard. The mind stops gripping. The senses stop reporting every detail, and the body stops preparing to act. You may feel this as a soft surrender. The muscles around the eyes release, the forehead smooths, and the breath becomes a gentle metronome. From here, sleep becomes easier to enter. The brain has found its night voice, and it is beginning to lead. And just ahead, there is another helper, a stabilizer that explains why wakefulness usually feels steady and why the brain sometimes needs a special kind of balance to cross into sleep. Most days, wakefulness feels stable. You do not usually slide in and out of drowsiness every few minutes like a boat rocking at its mooring. Part of that steadiness comes from a small set of brain cells that act like anchors. They release a messenger called orexin, a signal that helps the waking brain stay reliably awake. You do not feel orexin directly. You feel its result as continuity, as the ability to hold a conversation without drifting, to drive a familiar road without fading, to stay present through the middle hours of the day. Orexin is not the same thing as energy. It is more like structure, the frame that keeps wakefulness from collapsing. When the day is active, this stabilizing signal helps the brain coordinate many alert systems at once. It keeps them working together instead of pulling in different directions. At night, that stabilizer relaxes, not because it disappears, but because the brain no longer needs wakefulness to be held so tightly. This is part of the reason the descent into sleep can feel smoother when you are calm. The brain is willing to loosen its anchors when it senses that nothing requires your attention. There is a lesson hidden in this. Sleep is not only the presence of tiredness, but the absence of threat. If the mind feels unsafe, if it believes it must watch, solve, anticipate, or defend, it keeps those anchors stronger. The stabilizer stays on duty, holding wakefulness in place. This is why anxiety can feel like a bright wire. Even in a quiet room, the brain can behave as if it is standing guard. And it is also why comfort can feel so powerful. A familiar pillow, a trusted routine, a locked door, a soft voice. These are signals that tell the brain you can stand down. When the stabilizer eases, the sleep-inviting region we met a moment ago can do its work more fully. The hush signals find fewer obstacles. You begin to notice that your mind is less sticky. Thoughts still arrive, but they do not grab you as easily. The body feels heavier, not in a troubling way, but in a settling way. It is as though gravity is becoming more honest. This balance between anchoring wakefulness and permitting sleep is one of the brain's quiet miracles. It keeps you functional in the day, and it keeps you restorable at night. When that balance is disrupted, people can experience sudden intrusions of sleep into wakefulness, or sudden intrusions of dreamlike states into the day. The brain's borders become less clean. But tonight, we are not traveling into disorder. We are traveling into the brain's natural design, the ordinary choreography of letting go. So we soften the anchors gently. We let the stabilizer relax. And as wakefulness becomes less firmly held, the doorway into sleep widens. We step into the twilight corridor, where the mind begins to dream in small fragments, and the world becomes pleasantly distant. There is a particular kind of softness that comes just before sleep. It is not yet dreaming, and not quite waking, but something in between, like dusk, holding both day and night at once. In this twilight, your thoughts can become less logical and more like drifting leaves. A sentence begins, then turns into an image, then becomes a feeling with no clear name. You might see a brief scene behind closed eyes, a hallway, a shoreline, a face you haven't thought about in years. These are not messages you must decode. They are the mind loosening its grip on strict order. Sound changes, too. A distant car, a refrigerator hum, a neighbor's step. Each arrives, but it feels rounded, as if softened by fabric. The brain is starting to filter. It is practicing the art of not responding. Your body can give small signals that the transition is happening. The jaw slackens, the shoulders drop, the tongue rests more heavily in the mouth. Breathing often deepens here. The exhale can grow longer, and the chest can feel less guarded. Sometimes there is a sudden twitch, a quick jump of the leg, or the feeling of falling for an instant. It can startle you back toward wakefulness. These little jolts are common, like a system testing its own brakes. The brain is learning how to turn down muscle readiness without losing safety. Inside the skull, the pace of brain activity begins to shift. The quick daytime patterns that support sharp attention soften, and slower rhythms begin to appear. You do not need to measure them. You can simply notice how focus becomes less narrow, how the edges of awareness blur. This is also when the mind becomes more suggestible to emotion. A small worry can grow larger, or a small comfort can feel like a warm blanket. That is why we keep the tone gentle. We give the mind peaceful material so it can drift without catching on sharp corners. If a thought repeats, you can let it repeat without solving it. Repetition is often the mind's way of rocking itself. If you have ever felt that you were awake for hours when you were actually drifting in and out, this is the place where that illusion is made. The twilight can be hard to remember. It does not feel like a clear state. It feels like slipping. One moment you are aware of the pillow, the next you are inside a fragment of a dream, and then you are back again, not sure what happened in between. The brain is practicing the transition until it holds. Tonight, we let the fragments come and go without chasing them. We treat them like fireflies over grass, appearing briefly and then vanishing into dark. We allow the body to settle. We allow the mind to loosen. And soon, the twilight gives way to the first true stage of sleep, light and delicate, where the brain begins to build steady patterns that keep you resting, even as the world outside continues to move. And now, almost without noticing, you step onto the first true rung of sleep. It is light, fragile, and gentle, like the first thin ice on a pond. In this stage, the brain is still close to waking life. A small sound or a touch can bring you back quickly. Yet, something important has changed. Your attention is no longer standing at the door, waiting to respond to every knock. The mind becomes less interested in holding a straight line of thought. Ideas drifts sideways and the sense of "I am controlling this" becomes softer. The body follows. Muscles release more fully, especially in the face, the shoulders, and the hands. Your eyes, behind closed lids, stop seeking. They rest, and the feeling of scanning the room fades. Breathing becomes a little more regular. The exhale grows smoother, as if the body is choosing calm on purpose. Heartbeats often feel less hurried. The inner engine is easing down, one quiet notch at a time. Some people experience brief moments of hearing their own name or a sound that isn't really in the room. These are small echoes, a sign the brain is blending memory with sensation as it changes state. There can also be tiny lapses like missing frames in a film. You might notice that you were thinking, and then you are not sure where the thought went. This stage is often so light that it can be hard to admit it counts as sleep. You may wake and insist you never fell asleep at all. But the sleeping brain is already working differently. It is reducing the speed of its daytime chatter and allowing slower rhythms to organize the surface of the mind. These slower rhythms are like a calmer tide. They do not force you under, but they make drifting easier than steering. The brain also begins to reduce the body's sense of urgency. The readiness to move, to react, to speak becomes less automatic, and yet the brain remains watchful in a quiet way. It can still decide to wake you if something seems important. That is part of what makes this first rung safe. It is a cautious entrance, not a sudden plunge. Tonight, we do not worry about how quickly we descend. We let the first rung hold us for as long as it needs to. If you drift back toward wakefulness, that is okay. The brain is simply checking the border, then returning again. We keep offering the same message. The room is safe, the night is steady all around you, and nothing is required. And as the brain receives that message, it begins to settle deeper. It starts building stronger, repeating patterns that make sleep more stable, so you can remain resting without being pulled back so easily. Soon, you enter the next layer where sleep becomes more firmly held. The brain will begin to create brief bursts of rhythm that act like a gentle fence around your rest. Sleep now becomes steadier, less likely to slip away at the first small sound. It is as if the brain has found a comfortable chair and decided to stay. In this layer of night, you are harder to wake. The outside world is still present, but it feels farther off, like rain on a distant roof. One of the ways the brain protects this steadiness is by making brief bursts of rhythm. These bursts come in quick little clusters, like soft weaving on a loom. Scientists call these bursts sleep spindles, but you don't need the name to feel their effect. They are the brain's way of saying, hold the line. Between these bursts, the brain sometimes produces a larger, slower wave. It can feel like a deep breath taken on your behalf. These larger waves are sometimes called cha complexes. They often appear when the brain detects a sound or change that might matter. Instead of waking you immediately, the brain responds with a protective pulse. It is as if it checks the door, decides the world is not urgent, and locks the door again. This is a beautiful kind of confidence. Your brain is learning that it can stay asleep without losing safety. During the day, your senses deliver endless information. At night, the brain begins to choose what deserves your attention. The bursts and pulses of steadier sleep help with that choosing. They make it harder for ordinary noise to reach the surface of awareness. Inside, your body continues to settle. Muscles remain relaxed, and the breath keeps its slow tide. Temperature stays a little lower than daytime, and the whole system feels less charged. The body is no longer preparing for action. If you could watch your sleeping brain from above, you might notice an orderly pattern. Not chaos, not blankness, but a calm rhythm that repeats. This layer often takes up a generous share of the night. It is the long middle stretch where the brain practices staying asleep. And because it is long, it becomes a place of steady repair. The nervous system gets time to settle into a calmer baseline. In this steadier layer, the brain also begins to do some gentle sorting. It can revisit fragments of the day without asking you to supervise. Useful patterns may be strengthened. Unneeded noise can fade. It is less like filing papers in bright light and more like tidying a room in dim lamplight. You don't remember every move, but you wake to find the space feels calmer. Tonight, we trust this hidden order. We let the brain build its fence of rhythm. We do not chase wakefulness when it flickers. We allow the bursts and pulses to do their quiet work, holding you in sleep. And as this steadiness continues, the brain turns down the outside world even further. It begins to close the sensory gates more firmly so the night can deepen without being disturbed. As sleep steadies, the brain begins to dim the world from the inside, not because the world is gone, but because it no longer needs to be urgent. There is a relay station deep in the brain that helps pass information from the senses up to the thinking surface of the mind. Some scientists call this relay the thalamus, but tonight it is simply the gatekeeper. In waking life, the gatekeeper is generous. It sends sound, touch, and sight upward quickly, so you can respond. In sleep, the gatekeeper becomes selective. It holds messages more gently, letting fewer of them through. A car may pass outside, and your ears still receive it. It arrives gently. But the brain does not always lift that sound into awareness. It weighs it quietly and often decides there is no reason to interrupt rest. This is how sleep can feel like distance. The room is the same room, and yet it seems farther away, as if you have moved to a quieter place within yourself. The bursts of rhythm we met earlier help with this dimming. When they appear, they make the gatekeeper less likely to pass messages through. It is as if the brain lays a soft, thick blanket over the doorway. Ordinary sounds arrive, but they do not cross the threshold. Steady noises can become almost invisible. A fan rain, the low hum of a building, these can fade into the background because the brain quickly decides they carry no new information. Still, the brain does not abandon you. It stays watchful in a calm way. If something is sharp, unusual, or meaningful, the gatekeeper can change its mind. The message can rise, and you can wake. This is why you might sleep through steady rain, but wake to a new sound. The brain is not ignoring the world. It is sorting it. And sorting is one of sleep's quiet talents. It separates the urgent from the ordinary, the safe from the uncertain. Tonight, we help it by keeping the ordinary soft. We let the room be still, the light be dim, the night be predictable. As the gatekeeper keeps choosing sleep, the mind becomes less tethered to the outside. Inner experience takes up more space. You may drift into blankness, or you may drift into faint images that do not yet feel like full dreams. Either way, your body remains at rest. The muscles stay loose, the breath stays steady, the heartbeat stays calm. This gentle sensory dimming is a gift. It creates a protected chamber where deeper sleep can form. Because deeper sleep requires more than tiredness. It requires a world that can be safely turned down. And as the gatekeeper continues its quiet work, the brain is able to slow even further. Broader waves begin to appear, slower and heavier, carrying you into the deepest kind of rest, where the night feels solid and the mind becomes quiet as stone under water. For a while. Now the night deepens into its heaviest quiet. This is deep sleep, where the mind feels far from the surface and the body rests as if it has finally set down a long load. In deep sleep, brain activity slows into broad, rolling waves. Instead of many quick flickers, there is a shared rhythm, like an ocean swell moving across a dark sea. You do not experience these waves as thoughts. You experience them as heaviness, as stillness, as a sense that time has become thick. If you are woken from deep sleep, you may feel foggy or disoriented for a moment. The brain is simply far from daytime mode, and it needs a little time to climb back up. The body is often very still here. Muscles remain relaxed and movements are minimal. Breathing becomes slow and regular. Heart rate steadies. The outside world feels most distant. The sensory gates are firm, and ordinary sounds rarely reach awareness. Deep sleep tends to arrive more strongly in the first part of the night. That is when sleep pressure is highest, and the brain is most eager to restore. If you could watch the brain from the outside, you might see a gentle pulse. Many cells grow quiet together, then share a brief coordinated signal, then grow quiet again. This back and forth is part of what makes deep sleep feel solid. The brain is not racing, it is breathing. In these deep hours, the body can focus on maintenance that is harder to do during the day. Tissues repair, energy balances reset, and the nervous system has space to settle. It is not a dramatic repair, like a machine being rebuilt. It is quiet calibration, like a compass needle returning to true north. The brain, too, seems to use deep sleep as a foundation. It helps steady mood, support immune function, and prepare the mind for learning and focus the next day. You might feel this later as something simple, a clearer patience, a steadier attention, a body that feels less brittle. Deep sleep is not the only kind of useful sleep, but it is a special kind of grounding. It is where the night feels most solid. And even here, the brain is not unconscious in the way we imagine a blank switch. It remains responsive to true importance. If something urgent happens, the gates can open. The brain can bring you back. But when nothing urgent happens, the gates stay closed and the slow waves continue. They arrive, they pass, they arrive again. You can imagine them as the brain's lullaby to itself, a repeating promise. It is safe to rest. Tonight, we let those waves roll through without interruption. We allow the body to be heavy and the mind to be quiet, because after this deep grounding, the night will shift again. Sleep moves in cycles, and after the slowest waters, there comes a lighter current where the mind can become vivid and dreams can take a more colorful shape. While you rest in the deeper layers of sleep, the brain does something that sounds almost poetic. It tends to its own environment. It keeps its inner space healthy, the way a city keeps its streets clear, even while you sleep. For years, scientists have noticed that sleep seems to support a kind of housekeeping. In animal studies, the flow of fluid between brain cells appears to change during sleep in ways that may help carry away waste products that build up during waking hours. You do not have to picture pipes and pumps. You can picture gentle movement like water finding paths through sand. During the day, brain cells are busy. They send signals, store information, and use fuel. And like any busy place, byproducts accumulate. The brain needs time when the pace is slower, so maintenance can catch up. Some researchers describe this as a glymphatic system, a word that simply points to the idea of cleaning by fluid flow. The details are still being explored, especially in humans, but the overall pattern fits the larger truth. Sleep supports restoration. Science tends to speak in careful verbs, may seems, suggests, because the brain is complex and evidence takes real time. That caution is not weakness. It is respect. What matters tonight is not the label. What matters is the feeling that your brain has a night shift. When you fall asleep, you are not wasting time. You are giving the brain a protected window to do tasks it cannot do as easily while you are awake. This is one reason sleep deprivation can make the mind feel foggy. It is not only fatigue, it is also the quiet sense that the brain's inner room has become cluttered. Deep sleep, with its slow waves, may be especially connected to this kind of maintenance. The brain becomes quieter, and the conditions for slow, steady cleanup may be more favorable. Again, we keep the language gentle. The brain is more complex than any single metaphor. But the direction is clear. Sleep is part of how the brain stays healthy over a lifetime. And there is comfort in that. You are not merely disappearing into darkness. You are entering a state that nature shaped with care, a state that supports mood, steadies attention, and gives the body a chance to reset. As these deeper hours pass, the night continues its cycle. The slow waves do their grounding work, and then the brain begins to shift again, lifting toward a lighter, more active kind of sleep. You may not notice the moment it happens. You may simply find yourself in a dream that feels more vivid, as if a small theater has opened behind your eyes. And in that theater, the brain's work changes once more. The body stays quiet, while the mind becomes more animated, exploring scenes stitched from memory, emotion, and imagination. After the heavy grounding of deep sleep, the night begins to lift into a different kind of quiet. The brain is still asleep, but it becomes more internally active. It can feel like moving from the bottom of the sea to a calmer middle depth. You are still held by water, but there is more motion around you. This is the stage where dreams often turn vivid. Scenes can feel like stories, with motion, dialogue, and emotion that seems real while it lasts. If you could look closely, you might see the eyes moving behind closed lids, quick little flickers as if watching something from the inside. This is why the stage is often called rapid eye movement sleep, though the name matters less than the feeling. The body, meanwhile, stays remarkably still. The brain keeps the muscles quiet on purpose, so the dream does not become a movement in the room. Breathing can become less regular here. It may speed up and slow down, following the inner landscape. The heart can do the same. It is as if the body is responding to a world that is happening inside. This stage often comes after you have already been asleep for a while. The night tends to travel in cycles, moving from light sleep to deeper sleep, then back to this more vivid, active form. A full cycle is often around an hour and a half, give or take. But you do not need to time it. You can simply know that sleep is not a straight line downward. It is a gentle spiral, returning to certain rooms again and again. Early in the night, deep sleep usually takes more space. Later, the vivid dreaming stage often grows longer. That is one reason dreams can feel more frequent toward morning. The brain is spending more time in the dream theater. You may not remember every dream. Many fade quickly, like mist, as soon as you open your eyes. But even forgotten dreams can leave a trace, a softened mood, a strange calm, a feeling that something inside you has been moving. The brain has been working quietly. When you wake from this stage, you may feel alert quickly. It can be like stepping out of a film and into the room, still carrying images for a moment. And yet, the purpose is not entertainment. Dreaming seems to be part of how the brain processes emotion, memory, and learning, though scientists still debate the details. Tonight, we hold it gently, We do not demand meaning. A dream can be a collage. It can borrow a face from yesterday, a street from childhood, and a feeling from nowhere in particular. The brain is not trying to write a novel. It is simply moving through its own material while the body rests. And beneath it all, the same steady design continues. The brain keeps you safe, keeps you breathing, keeps you held. In the next moments, we will look at one of the quietest protections of the night, the way the brain gently silences the body's ability to act out dreams. It is not a trap, but a safety rail, and it allows the mind to wander freely while the body stays still. In the vivid dreaming stage, the mind can run. It can climb stairs, swim through water, speak with old friends, or race through impossible landscapes. And yet your body stays mostly still in the bed. This is one of the night's quiet protections. Deep in the lower parts of the brain, there are circuits that act like a safety lock. When vivid dreaming arrives, they send signals down the spinal cord that greatly reduce muscle movement. These signals come from older, deeper regions that also help control breathing and other basic rhythms. They are steady, reliable, and quietly powerful at night. The result is a kind of temporary stillness. The muscles of posture and limbs become quiet, so you do not act out the dream. This is not a cage, it is a seatbelt. It allows the mind to explore freely while the body remains safe. It keeps the dream inside the brain, where it belongs. Most of the time, you never notice this stillness at all. You simply sleep quite naturally. If you wake suddenly from a vivid dream, you might feel a brief heaviness in the body, a sense that movement is delayed for a moment. That can be unsettling, but it is usually short because the brain quickly releases the lock as wakefulness returns. On rare occasions, people can become aware while the lock is still on for a few seconds. The mind is awake, but the body feels slow to respond. Even this has a simple meaning. The brain's timing is slightly misaligned for a moment, like two gears catching before they fit again. Tonight, we take comfort in the intention behind it. The brain is trying to protect you. It is also a reminder that sleep is not passive. It is an organized, active state with careful boundaries. While the body is kept still, the brain remains lively. It can create images, feelings, and stories that are stitched from memory and emotion. The eyes may move behind the lids as if following the dream. The face may show tiny expressions that never become full gestures. The breathing may change with the scene. A suspenseful moment can quicken it, and a peaceful moment can slow it again. And still, you remain safe. The lock holds the body steady. This safety lock is not perfect, and it is not needed in the same way in every sleep stage. It is most closely tied to vivid dreaming. As the night cycles onward, the lock will engage and release again and again. It is part of the rhythm, part of the choreography. Tonight, we do not have to manage any of it. The brain knows when to hold the body still and when to let it move. We simply continue drifting through the night's rooms, and in the next room, we will look at another quiet task of sleep, the way the brain strengthens certain memories and softens others, like a careful editor shaping the story of your day. While you sleep, the brain is not only resting, it is also organizing. During the day, you collect impressions the way pockets collect small things. A phrase you heard, a face you saw, a problem you tried to solve, a feeling you couldn't name. Some of those impressions matter, some do not. Sleep seems to help the brain decide which ones to keep. It strengthens certain patterns and allows others to fade, so the mind is not overwhelmed by every detail of every day. In the steadier middle layers of sleep, those brief bursts of rhythm we mentioned, sleep spindles, often appear. Many researchers connect these bursts to learning and memory, as if they help the brain replay and stabilize new information. We can hold this gently. The brain is not a simple recorder, and memory is not a single file. But there is a sense, supported by decades of work, that sleeping on it can help. The brain uses the quiet hours to integrate what you learned into what you already know. Deep sleep may provide a solid foundation for this. The slow waves create a broad, synchronized rhythm that can coordinate far-flung parts of the brain. It is like a city turning off traffic lights and letting the whole grid breathe. In that calm, signals can travel in a more organized way. Then the vivid dreaming stage adds another kind of processing. Emotions can be revisited, softened, and restitched into memory without the full weight of waking stress. This may be part of why a problem can feel different in the morning, not solved by magic, but reframed by quiet work you did not have to supervise. It is also why sleep can affect mood so strongly. Without enough sleep, the brain's emotional systems can become more reactive, less buffered. With enough sleep, the mind often feels steadier. The same challenge can appear, and yet you meet it with more room inside. Tonight, you do not have to remember anything on purpose. You do not have to force learning or chase insight. Your brain already knows how to weave. It gathers threads and ties them into patterns while you rest. Even forgotten dreams, even blank stretches you cannot recall, can be part of this weaving. The work does not require your awareness. So, when you drift through the night, you can imagine a gentle editor at a desk, not judging, not dramatizing, simply sorting. Some pages are marked to keep. Some pages are smoothed and folded away. And when morning comes, you wake with a mind that has been quietly prepared, not perfect, not complete, but refreshed enough to begin again. For now, we keep moving through the night cycles. There will be lighter moments and deeper moments, brief awakenings and long stretches of quiet. And through it all, the brain continues its calm craft, closing and opening the gates of sleep in the rhythm it has practiced for a lifetime. Across the night, Sleep is not always perfectly smooth. Most people wake briefly, sometimes, many times, without remembering. These awakenings can be only a few seconds, a turn of the body, a swallow, a quiet check of the room, and then sleep resumes. The brain cycles through different depths, and the lighter moments between cycles are natural places for brief arousals. It is like coming to the surface for air without leaving the water. You might notice these moments more when the night is disturbed by light, noise, temperature, or stress. But even on a quiet night, small awakenings can happen. Sometimes they serve simple housekeeping. The body shifts position, adjusts temperature, or clears the throat, all without fully breaking the spell of sleep. They are not failures. They are part of the brain's ongoing safety system. The gatekeeper we met earlier never fully clocks out. Even in deep sleep, it stays capable of opening the door if something truly matters. Most of the time, it decides nothing matters. The door stays closed, but the brain still checks, gently. It keeps you alive. It keeps you safe. And it keeps watch without waking you fully. As morning approaches, sleep naturally becomes lighter. The inner clock begins to shift again, preparing the body to wake. The night signal that helped you let go grows weaker. Temperature begins to rise slightly. The sleepy pressure that built all day has been reduced by hours of rest. The brain has cleared enough of that signal to make wakefulness possible again. This is why the final hours of sleep can feel more dream-filled and more easily interrupted. The night is loosening its hold. If you wake in the early morning, you might feel your mind click on quickly. That is not because you suddenly became bad at sleeping. It is because your biology is turning a page. The brain is preparing for daylight. Tonight, we do not fight these patterns. We allow the night to be human, not perfect. If you wake briefly, you can return to simple cues: a slow breath, a relaxed jaw, a gentle darkness around you. You do not need to start the day in your mind. You can let the thought of tomorrow sit on a shelf, because sleep is resilient and forgiving. The brain knows how to return again. It has done it again and again through your life, often without you noticing the steps. A brief awakening is only a small ripple in a much larger sea. So we keep drifting. Cycle after cycle, the brain moves you through its rooms with care. And as we near the end of our journey tonight, we will gather these threads into one quiet understanding. Sleep is not a mystery you must solve, but a process your brain already knows, guided by timing, by pressure, and by gentle, protective design, night after night. Tonight, we have wandered through a process the brain has practiced for millions of nights. Not a trick, not a mystery to master, but a gentle return built into you. We began with two quiet forces. One was the pressure that gathers during the day as the sleepy messenger accumulates and reminds the brain it has been awake long enough. The other was timing, the inner sense of night that listens to light and darkness. As evening settles, the brain allows its night signal to rise, giving permission to let go. Together, pressure and timing create a slope. You do not have to push yourself down it. The brain then makes a careful choice. It shifts from wakefulness to sleep through a balanced handover, like a dimmer sliding lower until the room feels calm. A sleep-inviting region deep inside sends hush signals. Wakefulness steadies less tightly, and the doorway opens. In the twilight corridor, thoughts become fragments and images appear like lanterns behind fog. The body relaxes, the breath deepens, and sleep begins. Light sleep becomes steadier sleep. The brain creates brief bursts and larger pulses that help hold rest in place, keeping ordinary noise from pulling you back. A gatekeeper deep inside grows selective, letting fewer messages reach awareness. The outside world becomes distant, and the inside world becomes quiet. Then the slow waves arrive. Deep sleep grounds you, heavy and restorative, like the dark ocean floor. In those deeper hours, the brain tends to itself. It uses the night for maintenance and reset, with a patience that daylight rarely allows. Later, the night lifts into vivid dreaming. The mind becomes animated while the body remains safely still, held by gentle safety rails. Cycle after cycle, the brain moves you through these rooms. Sometimes you wake briefly, sometimes you sink for long stretches, and often you remember very little at all. And still, the work happens. The brain sorts, steadies, and prepares you for the next day without asking you to supervise. If sleep takes its time tonight, that can be okay. The act of resting, of dimming the world, is already part of the invitation. You can let your only job be softness. Soft breathing, soft attention, soft willingness too. So, if sleep ever feels fragile, remember this. You are not failing. You are living inside a system that is careful, protective, and deeply human. Tonight, you can stop trying. You can let the breath be simple. Let the shoulders soften gently. Let the forehead smooth. Let the mind release its grip on tomorrow. The night can hold the rest for you. And as the room stays dim and the world stays quiet, you can allow yourself to drift, not to disappear, but to return to the place where the brain does its kindest work. Good night.